Hello. Time once again for another episode of the Throwing Bagels Podcast. Kevin Mooney here with you alongside Chris Douglas. Hello, Chris.
Hey, Kevin, how's it going?
Wonderful. Yourself, sir.
Doing excellent.
Excellent. Jason Hamo with us as well. Hey, Jason.
Hello there, Kevin. How are you?
Hello. Joining us now on the Throwing Bagels Podcast, yet another special guest. They're all special, but this one is going to be fun. I can feel it already. But we're talking to the assistant professor of broadcasting and mass communication at SUNY Oswego. It's Professor Michael Riecke. And Professor Riecke, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, I'm thrilled to be here. Thanks for having me.
First off, we wanted to talk about next week is the solar eclipse. So unless you've been under a rock, you know about it. You know what's coming. We know upstate New York, a good swath of it is going to be right in the direct path of it. And so this semester, Professor, you are teaching a class called Covering the Eclipse. How did that course come about?
Yeah, the name of the course, like you said, is Covering the Eclipse. How did it come about? Well, one of the things that I firmly believe in as an instructor is that it's really important. I think this is really rooted in the tradition, not just of the broadcasting program at SUNY Oswego, but in SUNY Oswego itself, which is giving our students as many opportunities as possible to apply the skills they're learning in class, to have experiential learning opportunities where they can sort of perform in a similar fashion as they would if they were doing this professionally. So, whenever there's an opportunity to create a class that allows students to sort of operate in a very real world sort of environment, I like to seize that opportunity. And a colleague of mine, Catherine Loper, we both sort of have this philosophy, and we enjoy taking on these sort of applied courses that allow students to dive in. And to be honest, we both came into education from industry, and so for us, we love what we teach. We love to do what we teach. So this gives us sort of a gateway to sort of still practice what we do, on campus, and then, get to, and for us, it's so much fun, but to get to share our passion with the students in a really meaningful way. And I can kind of give you a little backstory. It may be boring, but I'll try to give you the abridged version. Originally, knowing that this was the start of the primary presidential season, our plan was, as we did 4 years ago, was to take a group of students to New Hampshire to cover the New Hampshire primary. Not to give you too much background, but there was a whole bunch of controversy over when New Hampshire was going to hold its primary. The date ended up being way too early in the semester, and long before they set the date, we said this is too wonky. We need to solidify something. We knew the eclipse was coming up, and we just saw this perfect opportunity to say, let's get together a group of students who are interested in live broadcasting, live streaming, and let's produce a show. The interest is there. The campus was doing a lot of different activities, and mostly the STEM fields are getting a chance to sort of shine during this moment. And we thought to ourselves, how can communication studies, how can broadcasting play a part in this? And I should say public relations as well. And we brought groups of students from all four majors together to produce a live show that'll air on Monday.
So how are you exactly covering it? Like the eclipse, is it strictly, is everyone kind of just broadcasting live, from wherever you guys are going to be doing with I guess I'm assuming outside wearing sunglasses, and is that how it's going to be covered?
So yeah, great question. So students, we started planning right at the beginning of the semester, and we made students go through the whole process. We started with, research, thinking up, we brainstormed ideas. How's this going to look? How's it going to take shape? Everything from the broadcast show itself. We have a companion website to go along with it where students are producing digital content. We have our social media channels. In addition to, we have an entire promo marketing team that's trying to drive eyeballs to the live stream and to the website. So, we started planning really early on, but day of, we have two hosts who are students. They're going to be in Lanigan A. A group of our students on the production side have developed a little set that we're going to use that day, which will be great. So our two main hosts will be indoors in the studio, but then we're going to have two reporters out live in the field. Really, they're going to act as co-hosts. So we'll have one live remote will be right on campus, just outside the campus center doors, where the students are going to have a watch party. And our other student will be the other live remote will be down at Brightback Park, right on the lake, where the city of Oswego is doing a big event and has bands coming and all that sort of stuff. So we'll have two different locations with live reporters, so we can bounce back and forth between the hosts. We have two cameras that will be pointed at the sun. We went out and bought our special filters so we can point the camera directly at the sun and get the eclipse, assuming it's not covered with a cloud. So we're hoping for nice clear skies in Oswego. Fingers crossed, still there. Those filters may end up being a waste of money.
Yeah, that's the thing that I think I'm worried about, because traffic is going to be an absolute nightmare as it is, and everyone's going to be here like CNY and like west, and
Yeah.
it's going to get cloudy. I just have a bad feeling.
That's what I said. I'm like, watch, we'll buy these filters. We won't even need them. But but yeah, so we're all prepared to go there. And then students have produced a bunch of rolling content, pre-produced content that will sort of, help build up the show, and we'll go, wall to wall live once we get close to totality.
What's the level of excitement among the students and faculty regarding next week's event?
I mean, the whole campus is excited. I think the campus as a whole has done a really good job of, wrapping this around all different disciplines. Creative writing majors are writing about it. Musicians are music program. The students are composing music for the day. There's a art show in Tyler Art Gallery, all connected to space and the eclipse and all those sort of themes. So there's definitely a vibe on campus, and it's you really feel the energy as we get closer to the day. The reality is setting in for students. In our group, I think this week we're sensing the nerves, right? Like there's still a lot of loose ends to be tied up, and that's all part of live TV, all the planning in the world, and you're still planning right up to the very end, and anything can change in a heartbeat. So, but that's all part of the experience, what I love today, the students were on the phone with the Oswego Police Department, trying to make arrangements for Brightback Park. So they're thinking about things like logistics, like where are our crews going to park? How far are they going to have to walk to set up our hit? How are we going to hold our space so someone else doesn't take it? We use live view. So to get the bonded cellular signal back to the studio, they checked to make sure that was working. But we're talking about, it's a bonded cellular signal, which means a lot of people are on their cell phones all in one location. That could be compromised. What do we do? What's the backup plan? So, they're excited. We're probably making them a little nervous, but that's all part of the process, being prepared for anything.
And so Oswego has canceled daytime classes for the eclipse. How will that affect the dynamic of everything going on during that day?
My hope is that, students being students, they get a day off, and sometimes, they take advantage of that, and that's okay. The good news is, really, if we're not really going to start to see anything noticeable until about a little shortly after 2:00 anyway. So they'll have plenty of time to rest up Monday morning. Right. Not our student crew on the broadcast. Our call time, depending on what role you have, our first call is at 9 a.m. So they'll be up early, but I think our hope is that students take advantage of all the activities that are on campus. There are several, Arts and Sciences is holding several lectures in the morning. The planetarium is doing a show throughout the day. There's a big event out, an eclipse watch party out at Rice Creek. So there's plenty to do on campus. I know the campus is a little bit worried about people who may be deciding to come to the campus to watch the eclipse and making sure we have enough parking. One of the things we made the students do is figure out where we were going to park, their faculty, to make sure the employee lots weren't going to be crowded with, onlookers. And there's so much we don't know. What time will people show up in the morning? Yeah. The city of Oswego is saying their events start at noon, but, there's nothing stopping eclipse watchers from, getting there hours early, and my guess is the most enthusiastic of them will. So
how does this come about? Like, how do you, as far as you mentioned, discussing this class, right? But how did it come about to say, hey, this is a class that we want to teach? Who did you have to run through to speak to? Probably Dr. Knapp or anyone above her, to say this is something that we want to do for the semester.
Absolutely, yeah. So, and thankfully, Dean Knapp and we're really on the same page, the same philosophy. Is when we have these opportunities, let's make them happen. And in this case, this was a really inexpensive opportunity, which I'm sure the dean liked even more. But yeah, that's exactly what we did. And we went and she loved the idea. And it's like I said, it's about getting students excited about the program they're in and giving them opportunities to be able to experience the real world. Increasingly, and these are trends happening across higher ed, but we see students coming to us. Even the 12 years I've been working in higher education, fewer and fewer students have transportation, are driving, either because they don't own a car. Many of them haven't gotten their driver's license yet. So some of the experiences that I think happened when I was an undergrad, the ability to drive an hour to your internship, a couple times a week, for some of our students, that's just not a reality anymore. And that's unfortunate, but in some instances, offering these sort of experiences is as close as they're going to get to a real world experience, to give them something to talk about in a job interview, and to give them that sort of real life, that real world a taste before they try to enter the profession. So, the more we can do these opportunities, the better.
Was there any thought process of taking the show on the road and maybe trying to go towards like the Buffalo area? Because I looked up, I'm sure hotels would have been expensive, because I looked up how much hotel was in Oswego, and the Best Western is charging $426 a night for a room.
What?
So,
Are you kidding me?
So I'm just saying, like, I'm sure Niagara Falls and Buffalo are charging even more than that.
So we have not ruled it out. So we also made the students come up with what if it's cloudy, or what if it's raining, even worse, right? Like if a cloud happens to pass over the sun when it's happening, all right, that stinks, but we'll still get some of that effect. It'll still get dark. You'll still see the blue sky turn black, right? But if it's raining, that really complicates things. It's possible no one will be in Oswego, right? So we do have contingencies to possibly head west or north into the path of totality. And the great thing is we have the technology. We keep having to remind the students this. We can be live anywhere in the world, really, as long as there's a strong enough cell signal. So, that's the benefit of that. So we've definitely talked about keeping a presence on campus regardless of what happens. But our other field crew knows that they may have an early morning drive out west or north to Watertown in the North Country if the weather looks nasty. So
you also teach advanced level courses around broadcast news reporting and broadcast news processing. What are the differences between reporting and processing the news?
Yeah, that's a great question. We're actually going through the process of changing those course names because they've become a bit archaic. So in reporting, we teach students. We primarily focus on video, but we focus on video storytelling from in the framework of journalism. And for the most part, the assignment students are doing, it's really preparing them for careers in television news. But we also have a class website, oswegonow.net. And by the way, that's where most of our Eclipse coverage is happening as well. And most of our journalism-based courses are using oswegonow.net, where there's, students are sharing their content that they produce in class. We have a YouTube channel. Oswego Now is our YouTube channel, and social media, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, X. But in reporting, students are learning to tell stories not only for traditional television, but they do some social media assignments. They learn best practices for, crafting visual content that's exclusively for a social media audience and not a broadcast audience. We learn the difference about demographics, about how people consume those forms of media. And then we really dive into the fundamentals of just good journalism and good storytelling. And what I love about that course is because not every student who takes it plans to go into traditional news or sports careers. Occasionally I get some PR majors, but the real emphasis is telling compelling stories through a video medium. And we do that within the framework of journalism. And my hope is, as a broadcast journalist myself, my hope is that students are as passionate about as passionate about visual journalism and broadcast journalism as I am. But the reality is they consume news differently than my generation, our generation. We're all roughly the same age. And that's okay. That's okay. But they're learning how to best utilize those other forms of distribution as well. So that's reporting.
Your schedule kind of seems like for this semester seems heavy in that aspect, covering those classes. Do you teach other classes like the mass media and politics class? Is that something that you teach, or some?
Yeah, I love teaching intro to mass media, and I typically do that online over breaks, summer and winter break. But I teach that fairly regularly. But no, I'm pretty much teaching our broadcast journalism curriculum is one why I was brought in originally to Oswego, and that's mostly where I stick. It's my background, it's my expertise. I still dabble in it when I can. I just produced last fall an hour-long series or an hour-long show for WRVO with a group of students. We just got nominated for a Syracuse Press Club Award, which we're excited about. I also host WPBS Weekly for WPBS, which is the PBS affiliate in the North Country, Watertown, and there's pretty sizable audience on the Canadian side of the border as well. So I do my best to continue to stay connected to the industry and do the work I love, and those experiences just I can bring them into the classroom, right? And what I love is my students experience when they're trying to produce their content, some of the same, challenges, obstacles I may face, when I'm working on a project. And it's great to feel like I'm still in the trenches with them in a way. And I think it helps me empathize with some of what they're coping with. And yeah, it puts us more on par, I think, as student and instructor. And I always say in these classes, I consider myself more of a coach. And they're my team. Even this Eclipse class, the instructor I'm working with, Catherine Loper, we really see ourselves as coaches, and our students are the team, and we want them to go out and perform. Mm-hmm. And hopefully that results in, not only a great show we all feel good about, but I love entering my students' work into competitions, both regional and national, because those are our wins, right? When we get recognized for the great work we produce at this tiny little, well, not that tiny, but small public college on Lake Ontario in upstate New York. So it makes me feel great when we're competing against these massive media schools, the USCs, the Syracuses, the NYUs of the world. So why shouldn't we be competing with them?
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's no reason, right?
Exactly. There's no reason.
The media landscape has changed a great deal since we've all, kind of more in and out of it. What should students expect in the field that they're going into? Like how it's changed, and what should they, be focusing on?
That's a great question. And what's getting harder, even from a curriculum perspective, is the expectation increasingly is that students can wear many hats and can do a little bit of everything. And I think that's been the way for a long time. But, so many of our students who, many of them still end up in traditional forms of media. The majority do. But increasingly, we're seeing students working jobs that involve media, but for non-traditional media companies. Hospitals that have entire production units, school districts that have entire production units, private companies that have their own, it's become so everybody now needs video for a website, for digital, for social, whatever it might be. And increasingly, yes, some of that is still outsourced, but increasingly, as you all probably know, we're finding the most unusual organizations and companies are hiring their own production teams just to have in-house. But oftentimes we're finding our students are, they're a team of one or two, and the expectation is that they can shoot, write, edit, throw After Effects in there for some motion graphics as well. So they need to wear a lot more hats than they did, say, 20 some odd years ago when I first entered the business. where I had the pleasure of being a reporter and having a photographer to work with. That's been going away for a long time, but even outside of the TV news industry, we're seeing that shift occur where the job students are getting, they really have to have a pretty broad spectrum of talents and abilities and skill sets in order to succeed. And it certainly makes them more marketable. I won't say that they won't succeed, but there's certainly more opportunities if they can have multiple skill sets or a broad set of skills, which makes it hard to focus on one specific thing and get really good at just doing that. But it's the nature of where we are right now.
To circle back on something you were talking about, the broadcasting classes, the news reporting classes cover storytelling. What do the broadcast news processing classes cover?
Yeah, so broadcast news processing is actually my favorite class to teach, and the name is a bit misleading. But essentially, every Friday, we produce a 30-minute live show. So it's whenever possible, it's original content. It's the students plan. We plan and we meet on Mondays. We plan for the week. We talk about what's coming up, what's important. We try to anticipate. So by Friday, our show feels timely and relevant. We'll meet again on Wednesday. We use an app called GroupMe where we have conversations throughout the week. Students rotate through positions. So the producers change every week. The on-air talent changes every week. We bring in a meteorology student every year who sort of serves as our weather personality. We do a sports segment. We do a live interview sit-down segment. There's a feature segment, and then it's traditional news that happens across the course of the week. Also a companion website, oswegonow.net, the YouTube channel. We stream live at 4:30 every Friday afternoon. So, students who or alums who may listen to this and say, oh, I did that at WTOP. I always tell my students, yeah, it's like producing a newscast at WTOP, except you have instant feedback because I'm there, course correcting if something's going wrong or saying, nope, we will never do that in a million years. Let's dump that. So it's WTOP news with guardrails, I guess, and instant feedback that students may not get at TOP. And I love TOP. I advise TOP, but I'm not there every night until 11 o'clock midnight with the students, and can't possibly watch every minute of programming they produce, nor can our other faculty. So, this is a chance to maybe catch some of those bad habits that may be forming undercover at WTOP and say, wait a minute, why are you doing it that way? And course correct. So
we could probably have used that back in the day, I think, with some of the programming we put out.
I was just going to say, man, I was in the wrong generation. I wish I was in school now.
Is there a de-emphasis in radio, like working in radio? Are there courses around radio? Because when we were in school, there were radio production, radio news, radio sales. Where does that field stand now when you look at coverage, when you look at courses at SCMA?
So it's funny because I've been there long enough to watch this kind of come full circle. When I first started at Oswego, we were sort of transitioning slowly away from some of the radio curriculum, and they were already sort of doing some podcasting stuff. And then I probably don't need to tell you guys, there was this weird lull, I think, in podcasting where the novelty wore off. I think everyone thought it ran its course. And we didn't have students interested in it. So we really pulled back tremendously on anything related to radio. We beefed up our audio sort of engineering sound design courses. So we now have courses in sound for TV and film, sort of went more in that direction on the audio side. And then podcasts had a renaissance again, and we've seen this total swing in interest, right? So, and NYO has mostly been thriving through all of this, the student radio station, and now we have a sizable number of students who come to us saying, I want to be a podcast producer, or they already have a podcast and they want to learn more about how to do it right, And so we've seen that shift over the last 4 or 5 years, I'd say. All of a sudden, there's this swing back into students who are interested in podcasting. So we have a we have a podcasting class. We've started running. We've revived radio production. We're working on a name change for that too. So essentially it'll be, I think we're calling it audio production for radio and podcasting, something like that. So they can learn about voice audio, how to balance levels, all of that stuff, and cross over the similarities. Our new building will have 2 podcast studios, a smaller one, and then a larger one that'll be right on the ground floor when you walk in. It'll be highly visible. We'll have PTZ cameras in there as well. So if they want to do a video podcast, they could do that too. So yeah, we're making new investments in podcasting, and I'm excited about it. And I'm glad to see this medium not, I never thought it was going to completely die, but I'm happy to see 18-year-olds coming to us excited about the medium of radio and audio again. It's some of these things are cyclical, but it's back. They just don't necessarily listen to terrestrial radio as frequently, but they are listening particularly to talk style programming. So which is good.
You had mentioned the Hewitt Hall and the beautiful new building that's going to be basically renovated and new studios and whatnot. Can you give us an update? How are things going there, and how are things progressing?
Sure. Your timing is perfect, because I just got the update from the project manager this morning. He gives a monthly, just kind of where things are, email, and I'm happy to report that we've been on schedule pretty much the entire time. And a lot of this, I will say, in my role that I've played on Hewitt as the SCMA liaison to the project, I've learned so much about this process. Yeah, it's made me so much more confident in my own home renovations moving forward. But what I really appreciate about the crew at Oswego is they did a really nice job early on in this project when they recognized that there were going to be all sorts of supply chain delays, and at making decisions quickly and acting on them, which put us in a really good position not to fall behind as some other projects have, particularly early on in the first phase, which meant our first phase finished on schedule, and we were able to move right into phase 2. Which is fantastic. Even when we think about like our broadcast equipment, we went out to bid once, and we're doing a take 2 now. Partially because the one thing we couldn't control is budgets. The budget was set for us just before the pandemic began, and then we all know what happened after that. So costs are more, but it's all working out, and we're working together, and that's exciting. And we're going to have a fantastic facility. And to be perfectly honest, some of these things that have been pushed back a little bit further than we wanted them to be, from a technology perspective, has actually, I think, been a sense of relief for all of us who are trying to desperately predict the future. When you're having design meetings in 2020 for a building that's not going to open until 2025, it makes you nervous, right?
Sure.
So the fact that we've had a couple of hiccups, I think, has actually worked in our favor. And we still have plenty of lead time to make those purchases and get everything in place for opening day. And I'm fully confident that fall 2025, our students will be in that building. So there's not much at this point that could hold it up. So barring any, natural disaster or something.
Don't say that.
I know.
Don't say that.
It's the news guy in me. I always think
you say it will happen.
I know. Always assume the worst, right?
Yeah.
Right. Once it is open in the fall of 25, how will it change the way that you teach students on campus?
What I'm most excited about is it will be the facility that our program deserves. Our students are really successful, and they've left our program. And I've heard the word scrappy used to describe our graduates a few times. And I think that's a good thing in this labor market, in this environment right now, because they work hard. They're not afraid to do little things, and they'll do it all. I talked about having to wear many hats. They're okay with that. And that's a winning recipe for our students. But what always makes me sad is our facilities, we've kept up with the times, but when you walk into Lanigan, it just doesn't feel, it doesn't feel like a happy place anymore. It's
Never
times it never was, but it's big, concrete. It's our students deserve better than that, and I don't think it speaks to the quality of our program or to the quality of our graduates. So what I'm most excited about is we're finally going to have a space that says this is what we do, and we're proud of what we do, and look at it. You can see it. You can see where the learning is happening, and this is a place you want to be. I think it's going to help us tremendously with recruiting, and I'm hoping. I mean, this isn't a problem in our program, but I'm hoping it helps. That root, that seed that makes students love SUNY Oswego. That is such a powerful part of our program, and I love it. And I can't imagine this is going to hurt that one bit. If anything, I think it's going to make it even stronger if that's possible. And so there are so many reasons why I'm looking forward to it, but it's definitely recruitment, definitely just students finally having a place that will feel like they're home. I want to walk into a lab at 10 o'clock at night and see my students all hanging out and still working. And we see that at TOP, and we don't want an NYO, and we don't want to take away from that at all. But only so many people can fit in those offices at 10 p.m. at night. So if we can spread the wealth and have a few more places where students want to spend time and learn from each other and chat about the projects they're doing and build those relationships, we want that, and we just don't have that space right now.
Throwing Bagels needs to be the first podcast out of that building.
I think so.
I was going to say,
Let's make it happen.
We should go live and just start interviewing professors and stuff the day it opens.
I love it.
Let's do it.
I love it. Let's hook that up.
It'll be our first video one too.
Yeah,
that's probably our only video one.
Right.
I guarantee we're looking for naming rights for the studio too. So if
Oh wow!
Interested,
Intriguing.
Start saving our pennies.
Save your pennies.
We might have to start selling stuff.
The Throwing Bagels podcast studio has a ring to it.
I do. Ooh. I agree with you.
Wow. How much can I get for my children?
Oh man. Professor Riecke, you've been at the center of a lot of great experiences for students, such as trips out to Hollywood, California, part of the SCMA Hollywood POV program. There's Al Roker was brought in to teach a class remotely, and also visited campus, of course. We've also were instrumental behind the first all women's broadcast, hockey broadcast, the WTOP. We had Natalie Barden and Jolie Santiago on earlier. They spoke very highly of you on our episode. How critical have those experiences been to enhance the students' experience at Oswego?
I mean, I think they're critical, and from my perspective, it's at the root of what makes us unique, particularly among the SUNYs, but I think among, programs across the country. It takes a little more work. It takes dedication from faculty who really care about teaching and learning and about students and are passionate about their craft. And it's I know my name has been on a lot of these things, and I get excited about it, and just I pour myself into my work because I love it. I get to have fun every day doing, I still feel part of a field that I love. And at the same time, I get to share that with students, and watching their love for it grow and develop and expand and adapt. It's the most rewarding thing I've ever done in my entire life. And I'm really fortunate that I have a lot of colleagues who feel the same way, and we have leadership that feels that way. But it's why so many of our students graduate and talk so positively about their experience. And not all of them go into the industry, but I get emails from students I had 10 years ago who may be doing something completely different. But they still remember those moments at Oswego. I call them, it's cheesy alliteration, but I call them memory makers. Some of these program opportunities we do, because from my perspective, yes, learning is the top priority, it's the top mission, but it's also why 10 years ago or 10, 20 years later, students look back and say, I remember when, and that had a profound impact on my life in some way, shape, or form. And it's not always, because sometimes it drives students into the industry and the field, and they're very successful, but other times I have a student right now who he worked in the industry for a bit in production. He's becoming a teacher. And his desire to become a teacher was rooted in his professors at Oswego who, he remembered how important that mentorship was and that guidance was, and now he wants to give back. And that to me is like the ultimate, we're doing something right. Those sort of special moments are, I think, what makes our program so special and makes us stand out. And it means great alums like you who still get together and do a podcast to talk about your alma mater. I mean, that doesn't happen everywhere. And
Right.
it's part of our special sauce, whatever that recipe is.
So what's next? What do you have planned for the future of, engaging these students?
Great question. Well, right now on the broadcasting side, we're going through a curriculum redesign, which we try to do every few years. I don't know that curriculum's super exciting, but what may interest particularly alums is we're assuming it all gets approved. There's multiple layers of approval. We're looking to move more into a sort of track-based system where students right now, when it comes to electives, it can be a bit of a hodgepodge, and we're finding that some students just need more direction in terms of what courses should I be taking. And so we're hoping by moving into more of a track-based system, students will be able to sort of identify an area of interest and then focus on that area a bit more. After I just said it's important to be able to wear a lot of hats and you need to know a little bit of everything. We feel like some students are leaving and they haven't even gotten great at one thing, and we want to make sure that all of our students leave with the ability to be as marketable as possible. And we think the tracks will kind of help give them a little more guidance in terms of shaping the electives they choose to build a particular skill set. So that's our hope there. And like anything else, it's sometimes it's a test, right? We think this will work. We think this will be more effective. We think this will help some of our students. And 2-3 years, if we're not seeing results, we'll go back to the drawing board and rethink it. It's just part of the process. The curriculum design never really stops. So that's on the horizon. We obviously have Hewitt, which we've already talked about. That's going to, over the course of the next year, really consume a lot of my time. And in terms of the big projects, the fall is election season. So we're launching a new class in the fall on the journalism side that's going to partner with the Palladium Times and WRVO to produce some content for them. My reporting class will pair with WTOP to produce content leading up to a big election night show. We're exploring right now the possibility of taking students, most likely Pennsylvania. We're looking to get to a competitive state and getting students to at least one rally of a presidential candidate. If we can find a weekend or something where both candidates are in the same town or within the same vicinity, we're hoping to make that happen. So that's what we're looking at for fall and what we're planning. We're planning right now. We just started the planning process for next year's iteration of Hollywood POV, our Los Angeles program, which is always exciting to get that off the ground again. And then we're always open to ideas too. I love it. Some of our best ideas have come from alums or recent graduates who say, "What if this?" And sometimes it's feasible, sometimes it's not. But we love hearing those ideas.
What do those tracks entail? Like, how will they, are they specific to like news reporting versus editing or?
Yep. So I can break them down for you. So there are 4 tracks in our proposal. One is we're calling broadcast digital journalism. So again, traditional. We'll point students there who are interested in traditional careers in TV news or sports. And on the sports side, we're really looking more at students who are going into sports journalism. So I want to be a sports anchor, sports reporter, that sort of thing, or on-air talent producer. We'll also have a separate track we're calling sports media that will allow students to sort of, and you could be a student going into sports journalism who wants to kind of, balance both sides of the industry, but that one will really cover, you'll have access to electives that could take you into sports journalism, sports multicam production, and sports marketing. We'll have a traditional production major that will cover both audio and video production. And then finally, a more generic media studies for the student who, believe it or not, this happens. We get students who come to us and, they're really not interested in being creators or facilitators of media. They just like to talk about media. And the media studies track is really designed for them, because that'll be more of our research sort of based courses, the more analytical theory based courses that will appeal to that set of students. So those are the four. There's some overlap, but again, the goal is to give them. There's still a lot of flexibility, but it kind of guides them through courses that will help them prepare to work in those specific sectors.
We hear that you're going to be the new Comm Studies department chair starting in the fall in September. What does that mean to you to have a role like that, to be appointed to that role?
It meant a lot for me. I'm primarily, it mostly means my colleagues trust me to lead us into the next phase. And there's a lot of change coming our way. Not only a new building, but this is we're entering into a challenging period in higher education, not just at SUNY Oswego, but across the U.S., but particularly in the Northeast and Midwest, where there are a lot of colleges and universities and a stagnant population. It's just the reality that enrollment is a factor in what we do. And so we have the positive of a new building, a new complex, and then we have the challenge of adapting to new enrollment trends. And I think those will be the two biggest projects that I sort of have to spearhead moving forward. Is we're really digging into recruitment and how do we sell? We know what we're doing. We know what we're doing is working. How do we sell that to a population of students that isn't what it was a decade ago, in terms of the number of students graduating from high school? We know every SUNY in the system is doing the same thing. So, being really strategic, thinking about those things, finding new ways to market and sell what we're already doing that's already working, getting the word out there. Thank goodness we have a team of professional public relations folks right in our department who are fantastic about helping us work through all of this. So that'll certainly be a focus, but also just maintaining the incredible work that we're doing and continuing to push it forward, to continue to make sure that we're mindful of curriculum, that we're shifting as the industry shifts, making sure that what we're teaching students is relevant, making sure that how we're teaching students is relevant. I think that's something we don't often think about, but how students learn, particularly coming out of the pandemic, has really changed. And we're very fortunate. We work at a SUNY that invested in a program that has allowed most of us to complete a certification in teaching. So it was a great skills update, which was fantastic. And looking for opportunities for our faculty who maybe feel like technology is surpassing their knowledge or their abilities. One of my main goals is to get them upskilling as well, right? We can't live in the past. We have to keep looking forward and being on the cutting edge. And that can be difficult. It's difficult for any of us as now that I'm in my mid-40s, it gets more difficult to keep up with everything and we get entrenched in our habits. But, making sure that faculty in my department have the resources and the time, and hopefully a leader who's motivating them to go learn new skills and keep up with what's next. So those are just some of my goals, and I know more will come as we dive in.
How closely will the future initiatives tie to President Wosu's Vision 4040?
That's a great question, and I think one of the things that we're working on now is thinking about where do we fit into that vision and how do we help? And we have faculty on committees who are having those discussions this semester. And we're already positioned in some ways because of we have one of the few fully online broadcasting programs in the entire country. And while that reach has been national in scope because there are so few fully online programs in the industry, Professor Nwasu's mission is really to get more people in our region connected. And I think there's an opportunity there, to really expand that offering. Our graduate program in strategic communication is well poised and is already growing rapidly. We've more than doubled our numbers in 5 years, which is fantastic. So there's definitely a role for us to play. and what's interesting is, I sometimes, I don't think we always think of broadcasting as like a direction career changers typically head. I think for those of us in industry, so many of our former colleagues' changed careers the opposite direction, right? They didn't come in later in life. But when I teach our online courses, I'm always surprised at the students we have in our online program come from all walks of life. They're all ages. Sometimes I have people who've been working in broadcasting for 20 years, but they never finished their bachelor's degree. And it's something they want to achieve. And right now I have a math teacher out on Long Island who's going to retire from teaching early, as soon as he gets his 20 or 25 years in, and he'll still be, he's going to be like 52 or something. He always wanted to be a sports broadcaster. So he's interning with a minor league baseball team out on Long Island this summer at 52 years old, right? And he's in our fully online program. And his hope is that, his second career will be in what he wanted to do in the first place, 25 years ago, and his parents told him it wasn't a good idea. So, there's a whole market out there that you don't think about. And it's one of the reasons I love teaching online periodically. I still love being face-to-face, but you meet these interesting people who have all sorts of different reasons for coming to our program remotely. And you realize that we can play a role in helping train our community, and that there are career changers who have this passion and this interest that developed later in life, and they're non-traditional students, but they're eager to get involved and get into the business. So
I knew the secret to retiring at 52 was going to be a teacher and then going into broadcasting. That's probably the path I would have chose.
You did it the wrong way. Yeah.
I know, right? Totally. Yeah. I mean, how stupid of me. But what led your interest in broadcasting or getting into broadcasting and attending SU?
I sometimes tell my students, and I think anyone who's worked in the industry, like we know it's a lifestyle, it's a calling, right? And I can go back to elementary school and I remember with my sister playing news. We'd had the VHS camcorder, and I do little mini newscasts when I was probably in, second, third, fourth grade. Every class project I could possibly do that wasn't a written paper, I would do something with video. I came from a family that was, we watched a lot of television, but television news was a part of our appointment viewing, multiple times a day. And it was just always part of my life. And my mom still has a paper I wrote in sixth grade about what I wanted to be and who would be my model. And it was Peter Jennings. So I don't know. I felt like it's just what I always thought I was going to do. And it's the path I took. I think I may have left the industry sooner than I thought I was going to go into teaching, but at the same time, I'm not one who believes, I won't talk a lot about fate and it was meant to be and all of that, but the cards all just seem to fall in place at the right time. And I feel like I'm where I'm supposed to be. And I love getting to talk every day about something I love and still getting to do it periodically through different projects and through my work at WPBS, but also getting to work with students. So
what moments come to mind when you do look back on your broadcasting career, which included 8+ years at News Channel 9 in Syracuse, but you've had a lot of great experiences, as a professional broadcaster. So what comes to mind when you think of those?
So we were just talking this weekend. I don't know why Y2K came up, but it did. We were all trying to remember what was going to happen that was going to blow up the world. Why did we think that? What was the story? And so people are Googling, but what I remembered, I was at News Channel 34, the ABC affiliate in Binghamton, New York. It was my first job, and I was anchoring the 11 o'clock show that night because the main anchors were off, and I was 21 and a baby. And but what I remember is I'll always remember that night because I was there and they made me stay late just in case, right? So I finished the newscast at 11:30. It switched over to the network, and then I had to sit there until 12:01 to make sure the lights didn't go out. But I remember where I was that night, and I actually told my students the story today because some of them are upset if they have to be in the control room during the eclipse that they're going to miss it. And I said, I don't know, all my years in news, like after a while, you just get accustomed to like, sometimes you're right there in front of it. And sometimes you're I'm alone in a newsroom in the middle of nowhere outside of Binghamton, New York, waiting for the world to explode. And at 12:01, I get to go home. So, not my proudest moment, but it's one of those moments that sticks with me. Obviously, my students, most of them were born well after 9/11 now, so they don't remember it, but still being a young reporter and being so uncertain at the time and having to, sort of navigate through your own sort of feelings of what's happening, but also tell the story to your audience, sticks with me. I went to Sri Lanka after the Southeast Asian tsunami in 2004 and spent just about 2 weeks there. With a team of doctors from Central New York, and that experience will stick with me forever. After Hurricane Katrina, being outside of New Orleans and reporting from there was certainly memorable. And it's one of those things where I always tell my students, the smells, like I still remember what it smelled like, and this business, you get to do the craziest things that other people don't get to do, and those memories will stick with me forever. And that was being a local reporter in Syracuse, New York. I interviewed Joe Biden before he was president, Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton, George W. Bush. So it's like, it's just, who gets to do that stuff? It's great. I have amazing memories, and I think there's no better business. Well, I haven't worked in many other businesses, but there's something about the bond you make with your colleagues who work in broadcasting, particularly in broadcast news. I'm still in touch with just about everybody I've worked with, and we can, even though we don't live in the same cities anymore, when we see each other, we can pick up like we, hadn't been separated a day. And so there's just something extraordinary about the business that forms bonds with people that is, it's I think they're lifelong, and I'm just really happy I had that experience.
So you mentioned a few minutes ago, it was almost meant to be, like getting into teaching. What made you decide to, say, I've been doing broadcasting for a while, but I feel like there's something else I want to do and go into the teaching field?
So I was anchoring mornings at News Channel 9, and I worked out a pretty good contract, which I was, proud of myself for at the time. But essentially, I started work at 4 a.m. and after the last GMA cut in at 8:55, I got to walk out the door at 9 o'clock. Except on days when I had to fill in to Channel 9 did this. They still do Bridge Street. It's like a lifestyle talk show. I did that for a period of time and would fill in occasionally. But I got to leave. And it opened up my whole day. And my plan at the time when I got the deal, which I didn't expect, I thought, if I can make this work, I want my master's degree. And it was for no reason. At the time, I wasn't planning on leaving the industry. I just felt like it was something I wanted. I'm competitive. My sister was also about to enter her grad program. She's younger than me. And I thought, well, my sister's going to have a master's degree. She went on to get a doctorate. I didn't go that far. But I wanted it. And I thought, this is going to be a great time. And I chose education partially because, when you're working the morning show, you cover a lot of school stories because that's your audience. Mm-hmm. And I was fascinated by it. I was interested in it, and I thought, well, let's just see what this is about. And so I dove into an education program, and ultimately, as part of a project, I started working with Onondaga Community College in their program, and I was working on like curriculum mapping. And so I had an opportunity to sort of like redesign their program, and it turns out they were redesigning it anyway. And I got to working with their professors, and they had a part-time adjunct opening, and they said, why don't you come teach for us? And I did, and I loved it. So it was one of those like unexpected, I didn't go looking for it. It just sort of happened organically. And I did both for a while and loved it. And then I had an opportunity for a full-time job at Quinnipiac University to serve as the director of essentially of their student media organizations and teach one class. It was someone I had met at an alumni event at Syracuse. She worked at Quinnipiac, knew they were looking. At the time, Channel 9 was going through its umpteenth ownership change in, a few years. And I was one of three male anchors, and I saw what happened at the NBC affiliate, and they had just released their youngest male anchor when his contract was up. And I didn't know. And it was the recession, right? It was 2008. So things were a little scary. And it was an opportunity. It was something different. I had offers to go to other markets in the past, but I became so, I hate to say this, but I became really comfortable in Syracuse, and it became home in a lot of ways. And so, yeah, the Quinnipiac job came up, and I said, you know what, let me roll the dice and see where this takes me. And I ended up back in this area anyway, but and that was intentional. I was able to leverage that opportunity to get back to the place that really started to feel like home. So,
are you from this area originally? This area, like I'm still there, but I'm not even there anymore.
Yeah. No, not really. I grew up in northeastern Pennsylvania, outside of Scranton. But it's funny because one, my parents are huge Syracuse fans. My mom lived in Syracuse for a couple of years before I was born, but we came to Syracuse a lot as a kid. And when you live in Northeast Pennsylvania, you're either going to, Philadelphia, New York, or Syracuse were the big cities for shopping destinations. There wasn't a ton in Scranton, but growing up, we sort of always, Syracuse was still a big city to us, which is funny to me now, but growing up, it was. And I think for my parents, traffic was easier. So coming to, Carousel when it first opened was easier than going to the King of Prussia Mall in Philadelphia. So we spent a lot of time coming up here.
So one final question we have for anyone that is attached to Oswego in any way, alum, current professor, students, what have you. Our favorite dining hall food was always the chicken patty sandwich. Is that something that you indulge in while you're on campus?
It's it's one of the first meals I think I had at SUNY Oswego.
Nice.
Students, you got to have the chicken patty. So yes, I'm a big fan of the chicken patty sandwich. I sometimes like to get it with buffalo sauce, which some students tell me is sacrilegious, but it makes a nice little buffalo chicken sandwich. So.
That could be way worse. Trust me. I've heard worse.
Oh yeah. No, we don't judge here.
Okay.
We've heard a lot.
Good.
Yeah. We've heard some crazy things no. And also our final question here is, when you're going off campus to eat, is Oswego Sub Shop a stop for you? And what is your favorite sub if it is?
Oh, that's a great question. Oh boy. Yes, it's generally my go-to if I'm, had a long day and I need to grab something quick or I need a quick lunch. But I'm so boring because I always get the works. So, they do it up, but I generally go turkey. I do order the Roker once in a while. It's good. It's good. And I felt like I had to have it the last time he was here because he asked and I hadn't tried it. So
no cheeseburger? No cheeseburger?
Yes, the one with the cheeseburger. Yes. It just, when I think of a sub, I don't think I'm a traditionalist. I like a nice cold sub, and I grew up in Pennsylvania where subs were hoagies. Right. And but yes, I've had the Roker. It's good. But I go classic turkey.
I hear a little hesitation there when you say it's good. So I don't know.
If we ever have him on, we won't let him know. You said that.
Please don't let him know.
No, we won't. We won't tell him.
We've been trying to get him on for a while. Al, if you're listening.
Come on. Yes, we got to do. Great story today. This is completely off topic, but I just saw it like an hour before I came on. Brianna Watson, one of our alums, works for Al now. She graduated 4 or 5 years ago. She was with Al today, and she just posted a picture. It's Al, Brianna, and the Bidens.
Huh.
Joe and Jill. So
I saw he was at the White House today. They did that for the Easter egg roll.
Yes, it was the Easter egg roll. Yeah. So one of our recent grads just hanging out at the White House lawn with Al and the president. So
pretty cool gig.
Yeah,
that is cool.
Super cool gig. Super proud of her.
Well, Professor, thank you so much for joining us on Throwing Bagels. We wish you all the best, continued success, and congratulations later in the fall on taking the big chair at Comm Studies. So congratulations.
Thank you so much. And thanks to you guys for doing what you do and showcasing our programs. And we love it. Thank you so much.
And that was Assistant Professor of Broadcasting and Mass Communication at SUNY Oswego, Professor Michael Riecke. Another great interview on the Throwing Bagels podcast. And this is going to be great. Like we now have to circle this on our calendar, September 2025, when Hewitt Hall opens. That is going to be like the moment of moments, right?
I expect an invitation. I mean,
Yeah,
we have to be invited now, right?
Of course, we have to be, right?
I think so. I do. I mean, we definitely need to do a show from up there.
Yeah,
Come on. We've showcased like everyone in the comms department.
See, so we're gonna have to have a bake sale or something so we can raise
Yes.
funds to have it be named after us.
and my kids selling lemonade on the street. My daddy
One way to
wants to
do
go
it.
to Oswego.
One way to do it.
$1,000 a glass. That'll work. There we go.
Okay, excellent. Guys, Michael Riecke, he told us how his name is pronounced. It is Ricky. So, of course, I had to come up with a top 5 Rickies, my own top 5 of Rickies of all time. Okay, you guys ready for this?
I'm ready.
Well, so let's give some more context. So he would say, what would he say? Oh, sugar. Because he would give an example like Ricky as in
So he said Ricky Martin.
Ricky Martin, right?
Yeah, which is not in my top 5 list, by the way.
So
no, okay.
So but no one in class in 2024 is going to know who Ricky Martin is, right? So
or Ricky Henderson or
Ricky
yeah.
Henderson.
Yeah.
But Chris, please proceed with your list.
But they might not know half the people on my list either.
I feel like they're not going to. I feel like they're not going to know.
Top 5 Rickies of all time. Number 5, Richard Pryor.
But did he go by?
But he
Ricky?
wasn't known as no. This list, no,
that's my list. No, hang on.
No.
Number 4.
He's not a Ricky.
No,
though.
number 4, Rick Sanchez from Rick and Morty.
No.
Number 3, Dick Van Dyke.
No.
Number 2, Michael Riecke. And number 1, Dick Trickle.
How does Michael Riecke not get number 1?
Listen,
I
it's my
disagree
list.
with it.
And
But your
there are
list,
people who
top
are named
5.
Ricky.
yeah.
Listen, Richard, Dick, Ricky,
But
it's all the same name.
they didn't go by Ricky.
Hey, my top 5 list.
That's
You're wrong.
that might be, no offense, Chris, but that might be one of the worst top 5 lists I've ever heard in my entire life.
Hey, you come up with your own top 5 then of Rickies. And then we'll compare.
I mean, I would have had Ricky Henderson on there.
Ricky Henderson, Branch Ricky.
Branch Ricky, there you go. Branch Ricky should be number 1, probably.
Yes.
Wow. Branch Ricky number 1.
Branch Ricky.
Yeah, Ricky Henderson number 2. Ricky Martin probably number 4-ish. I'd go Ricky Lake 5.
Ricky Lake?
Yeah, she's famous.
Come on, Ricky Lake.
Rick Schroeder, right? We could have given
Ricky
Schroeder.
He went by Ricky Schroeder, and he used to live around the corner from me when I was a kid.
That's right.
Booyah.
Wow.
Booyah.
That's right.
A booyah.
Staten Island.
He's from Staten Island. He lived
Ricky
around the
Schroeder.
corner from me. I mean, he was older than me, but he lived around the corner from me when I was a kid before he made it famous on Silver Spoons and moved out to LA with Mr. Fancy Pants. Yep.
So did you have
From
dinner
Staten
at
Island.
his house at any point? Were you
No,
invited
I
over?
never knew him. I didn't know him. He was like at least 5 years older than I was, I think.
Oh, yeah, that would be awkward.
I mean, I was I don't know, like 5 when I moved into the house we lived in. So he would have been 10. So yeah,
Oh, yeah.
at least, I don't know, probably maybe even older than that. Alyssa Milano used to live around the corner from me, another house I lived on Staten Island. So
Wow.
How about
my
that?
sister used to play with her.
How about that?
Yeah.
So, Chris, I think we're going to just edit out your list. That
Oh,
was-
come on.
thumbs down.
Great. That list is excellent.
That's a horrible
I don't
list.
care what you say.
We can put that in the we
Top
can put that
5
in the
Rickies.
we can put that when we post it.
Top 5 Rickies. Hey, listen, that's my top 5 list. You guys come up with your own top 5 list. All right.
That's a
We
poor
just did. We
I
did.
know.
Although I think we'll put Michael Riecke at the top. We'll give him number
Yes.
1, and then Branch Rickey, and then Ricky Henderson, and then Ricky Lake, and then Ricky Schroeder. The end. That's your top
There you
5.
go. Hey, look at that. Boom.
I
Boom
was
goes
so
the
wrong about
dynamite.
that.
All right. I think that's going to do it for this edition of the Throwing Bagels podcast. Special thanks to Michael Riecke for joining us. Thank you for listening to the podcast. We greatly appreciate that. And we'll see you next time. We got a blog coming up on Monday, Jason's turn, and then another fantastic podcast coming your way. We're going to talk a little bit. It's hard to believe, but the NHL playoffs are right around the corner. So we're going to have fellow alum and hockey columnist Dan Mount on the and big fan of the podcast. So we are very much looking forward.
We are
to
looking
having
forward
Dan
to it.
in a couple of weeks. Keep in touch. Throwingbagels.com. Throwingbagelspodcast@gmail.com is our email address. And we got all the socials up there on our website. So don't hesitate to reach out, drop us a line. Chris, as always, been a pleasure.
Kevin,
Jason,
Fun times, guys.
Jason,
Fun times. Go bye-bye.
see you later.